Who can share? Only the host. Great.
You should be a co-host now. Yep.
All right, great. Close that out and let me just present this. Thank you very much for sorry about this. Thank you very much for having me in to share about our extended school year services. I want to just start out by big shout outs to central office staff, including Jay, Kristen, Bob, and Nicole for their guidance. It's been an absolute, as you can imagine, crazy ESY season for us. Gail and Marita in the central office, SPED office, has been helping with all of the mail that's been coming back. Nail and the tech team have been fantastic as well. Our reading specialists, I'll talk a little bit about what they're doing this summer. Heather Demers and Kristen Perrone are two ESY teachers, and they have been providing unbelievable support around educational tech. So I thank them. They've been providing some training. All of our ESY staff for their flexibility. Our team chairs during the school year who pull together all of the ESY students. Our ESY families, we so appreciate your waiting, your patience as we pulled the program together. And of course, Dave, Liv, and Maddie Rice, who are out back at the end of June making home deliveries of tech so that I could continue to work. So thank you to them as well. It was definitely a family effort this year. Our summer season of learning, I will talk about extended school year, but I just want to give the committee a highlight of all of our summer programming that I work with. Our summer season of learning, our enrichment program, we decided mid-May because of COVID to cancel. This was going to be our second summer, and enrollment was already looking to be twice as much as what we had last summer. But due to COVID, we wanted to allow families to find other programming or other daycare if they needed it. And we also wanted to give staff enough time to find other employment. So I look forward to bringing that back next summer. I want to remind families, if you're watching this now, if you have students, elementary age students, entering K all the way up to entering grade 6, we have summer learning bingo and passports. Both have been changed up given the COVID situation. As you know, with the passport, we've encouraged families to get out and participate in learning experiences. The passport has really been, got a little bit of a change up because of COVID, where we have now a lot more online services. I think the passport's still over 30 pages long. It's just a little bit different of a focus. So I would like to thank the PTOs and the PTG, North and South. They're offering $50 Amazon gift cards for winners and participation gift cards as well as part of our raffle. So they spend over $500 each to support this program. So big shout out to them. I also want to thank Nicole Bless. She is a parent at Millbury Street School who helps me with all my graphic design. So if you'd like information, if you're an incoming kindergartner or first grader, visit South Grafton and North Grafton's website for the bingo sheets. And then if you are heading into Millbury Street or at North Street, you'll find your summer bingo at their websites as well. I want to highlight the work of the reading specialists at Millbury Street, North Grafton, and South Grafton. We typically do summer mailings. We've been doing that for about 3 to 4 years under the Title I grant. So thank you to Tracy for allowing us to do this with the money. This year we decided to continue the mailing, but a little bit scaled back just because we weren't sure about getting into schools and photocopying. So every reading teacher wrote letters to their students. About 106 students this summer will be receiving letters in July and August with the sole purpose of encouraging students to continue to read during the summer months. So I want to thank the reading specialists for writing those letters and sending those out this summer. So extended school year programming, just as a reminder for everyone, during the IEP process, the IEP team determines whether students are eligible for extended school year. All right. Oh, there we go. So to remind you of the data, I love some good data. 2019, we had 192 students participate. This year, we have 163 students participating. We invited last year 254 students. This year, we invited 262. Again, they are qualified during the team chair process. We had 53 students or families tell us no, and we had 46 that did not respond. we have been getting, just today, I had 3 more parents reach out and say, oh, I'd like to participate. So please, if you are one of these 46 families and you'd like to participate, just reach out to me, ricel@grafton.k12.ma.us, and we will be happy to put you into your programming for the next 3.5 weeks. This is a big difference from 2019 to 2020. We had 102 staff members. This year we have 42 staff members, plus we contract out for our OT and PT services. So it's been different with the staff. So this year, we made the decision to offer the majority of our services as remote learning, as we had since March 13th. What that looks like is it includes videos of lessons. We have live lessons. Teachers are consulting, and they then offer at-home activities. So it's a combination of all of these based on the students' grades, what grade level that they're at, and it's based on also what the teacher wanted, comfort level, and what they were able to provide for their lessons. They're using Zoom, Google Classroom, Schoology, Seesaw, and YouTube. Seesaw, YouTube, Heather Demers and Kristen Perone offered those trainings before we began, so thank you to them. And then we are working on, this is exciting, we are working on face-to-face services and in-home services for the students in our intensive needs programming. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. So our in-home service is a big shout out to Nicole McDonald. As I was getting our remote learning up and running last week, she ran with the in-home services and the face-to-face. She started getting that up and running. So I very much appreciate that. Students with ABA programming in their IEP and in the intensive needs program, we're going to be offering them in-home ABA services. That's applied behavior analysis services. All students, based on what works for their family, are offered up to 3 hours a day for 4 days a week for 5 weeks of direct support. And our own BCBA is supporting with parent training, assessment. They're working hand in hand with the contract services. So big shout out to all of them as well for doing that. Our face-to-face services, moving forward, again, big shout out to Nicole for the face-to-face. It's going to be, again, the students in our intensive need programming that have OT, speech, PT on their IEP for ESY. We're looking to begin that on Monday, July 20th. We are finalizing those details today. Thank you to Tony LeMay for joining Kristen and Nicole and I to work out those programs. And we are thinking outside, under tents. And again, we're finalizing that with the hope that that begins July 20th for families. There we go. So ESY staffing, again, I want to give a big thank you to them. We planned face-to-face programming with staff, and then we planned remote learning with them, and everyone was extremely flexible. Usually we have hire letters out by March or April last year, and they waited until June, and they were very patient with us, so I appreciate that. We're offering them, I hope, a level of support. We did survey them last week, and they said they were happy with the support. We're offering weekly office hours through Zoom. We have a Q&A document, and then we've offered the trainings for YouTube, Loom, and Seesaw. Again, thank you to Heather and Kristen for that. So here was our timeline. June 5th, we definitely held out. We wanted to make sure we did this right. So June 5th, the decision was made based on the initial DESE guidelines. June 6th through the 8th, we mailed letters home over that weekend. We were able to get those out. And then June 29th, we offered a device pickup day with Neil. So thank you for Neil for doing that. And then the 30th to the July 1st, the devices were delivered to people's homes. And then the week of June 30th, ESY teachers and related service providers reached out to parents. And then July 1st, right before the 4th of July holiday, DESE released their finalized guidelines. All throughout the month of May and June, we regularly met as an ESY team to discuss what are our options, what do we know now, what does the COVID data tell us, what are other districts doing, and you know, we took the decision very seriously. So that was, even though these are the dates I'm highlighting, we met regularly to discuss these items. So the timeline for families was July 6th, the program began, our program, the students in the 5-week. Then on July 13th, just yesterday, our tutorial program began for students in the 4-week program. This week, parents and guardians and everyone at home should be receiving their individualized remote learning plans via email. So it's all laid out for them what their child will be receiving for ESY. And then July 20th is our face-to-face for those students in the intensive needs programming with their OT, PT, or speech. And that was up to parents. And then August 6th, not that I'm wishing the summer away at all, August 6th is when our program ends. So I will take any questions that you might have. I feel like I rushed through that. I'm sorry. It was a lot of information.
Liz?
Sure. Thank you so much for all of this work, Lisa. This is great. I was just wondering about the kids we didn't get a response from. Have you had time to do any follow-up to try to reach them? What's your tactic?
Yeah, so they get a letter, as I mentioned, in the mail, and then it is multiple emails after that. So since that letter, they've received 2 follow-ups confirming, then they received a welcome email from me, and then we are treating them within the ESY program as if they said yes. So they are still getting all of the programming from us, whether we've heard from them or not. And that's what's kind of prompting people to reach out to us and say, oh yes, I am participating. Or if we see that they're returning work, we are marking them as a yes because they are returning work to us. So we are acting as if they are yeses.
That's great. Thank you.
Rahul? You're on mute.
There we go. Lisa, good work. I have a quick question. Is it the first time you're going remote on this?
For ESY, it is, yes. Typically we are face-to-face. You know, we'll work at 3 or 4 of the schools, but this year we are remote, yes.
How difficult was it for your team to come up with the curriculum and to make it work?
For the team, logistics were, it wasn't that difficult. We were planning 2 programs basically, right? So we had to plan face-to-face, and then we planned, then we had to plan remote. I have to say kudos to the teachers who really pulled it together. Many of them have taught with us in the past, so they were very familiar with the curriculum. It was the tech nuances. People wanted to know, how do I record lessons? So we were able to provide them with the Loom training, and we were able to provide them with the YouTube. But many of the staff are already Grafton Public School employees. So they've been dealing with this since March 13th.
Okay, were there any parents who came to you asking for example, a laptop or something like that?
Yes, we had probably about 12 to 15 people asking for a device. Many of them had already asked for a device once we had school closure March 13th.
Right.
So they had a device. We said, just keep it.
Oh,
but
you said
we just let them keep it. And then Neil did did a pickup day in the morning at the high school. And then I had my family out delivering at night and delivering computers at night. So everybody has a device that has asked for one.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Amy?
Yeah, I just was curious about the face-to-face. How many students are going to get that, and what does it look like in terms of opening up buildings to do it? Are you just going to try to go outside, and if it rains, not have it?
Well, we're hoping for some tents. So as long as it's straight rain, we should be fine. Yeah, we are looking for, again, it's our students in our intensive needs program, and they received, I would say 2 or 3 weeks ago, a survey from Nicole saying, if we were to go remote, what is your interest level, before we even staffed? So parents came back to us and said, yeah, absolutely. We had parents who said, nope, I'm all set. And then we had parents, tell me a little bit more before I commit. So from there, Nicole worked with them, and it is, I think we're at about 15 to 20 parents. Speech was very popular. People wanted speech services. That was something that they wanted. So we are looking Monday through Wednesday, it looks like, based on the provider's services. And we're going to try to just do it in the morning. We're thinking about starting at 7 or 7:30. Just before, that's what parents wanted. I know I'm not somebody who gets up either. I just saw your face, but they parents wanted times that start at that time, and we're hoping to be done by noon before it gets hot. But yes, we definitely have talked a little bit about what constitutes a weather day.
Good. Awesome. So one location then.
One location. The staff at that school doesn't know yet, so I just don't want to. We
Oh,
finalized
it's
it
fine.
today. I don't want them to find out here, but they will be finding out hopefully tomorrow, and it will be at one location.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
So to continue with the face-to-face, did we have any issues with staff wanting to do face-to-face, or did they have concerns?
Yeah, that's a great question. So back in May, when the school closed for the rest of the school year, I wanted to prepare for both, right? We planned an in-face and a remote. So I emailed staff that had applied back in February asking them, you've got 3 choices here. You know, you either want to go remote only, you only want to do face-to-face, or you're willing to do both. And we had staff say they did not want to go remote, which I was surprised by. And then we had staff who said, I'm absolutely not going face-to-face. So it was a mixed bag.
So do you have enough staff then to take care of this?
Yes, yeah, we
Or do-
definitely, like I said, we normally hire about 102 people. So unfortunately, the people who really, who were counting on working were our paras. You know, a lot of them were counting on this. They've worked ESY for years. And, you know, they were really the ones who made up that difference between the 102 and 42. The teachers I was all set with, yes.
Okay, just making sure. And then just let us
Thank
know if you guys need anything for, I don't know what we have provided for them, but again, it's their safety that we're all concerned about. So I know things will arise.
Yeah, Nicole put together a Grafton Public School health plan for face-to-face. It was something that was part of the DESE guidelines that we had to do. We modeled it after Westboro's. They were kind enough to share it with us. I think they modeled it after Holliston's. So all the districts are doing the same type of work. So we have that health plan in place. It's about 7 to 9 pages long, and that will go out to parents and staff who will be participating face-to-face so that they have all that information as well.
Thank you. Lisa, I have a couple questions. I think I'm missing. So we had 42 staff members this year and 102 last year.
Mm-hmm.
So the difference is
Yeah, so the
The
difference
difference-
is going to be the BLAs, your paraprofessionals. So when a
Okay.
student has a 1-to-1 para or a 1-to-2 para in a classroom setting, they don't necessarily need that support over remote. We do have a handful of paras working with us because of the intensive needs programs, or if a class or grouping had a large number of kids, we ask paras to support through the Zooms. But as far as like that day-to-day behavior management piece, or, you know, whatever reasons a student has a para for, that is eliminated by the Zoom.
by the remote learning.
By the remote, sorry, yes.
Yeah. Okay. And then has the number of hours changed because we're going remote than it has in the past? Are they still getting the amount of instruction that they would normally get, or have we had to adapt?
We adapted just like we did with the school year, right?
Yeah.
We don't want kids sitting in front of Zoom for 6.5 hours.
Right.
So especially, you know, your kindergarten and first graders. So it's a combination of videos, live instruction, and then work that they are to do independent. And the purpose of ESY is for regression. So we keep telling parents that this is work that they should do independently. They've already been introduced to it. This is about maintaining their skills. So the lessons aren't new material unless you're in one of our reading programs. We also offer Wilson, Just Words, and Heggerty.
Yeah.
Phonemic awareness program. So they might move forward a little bit differently than students in an ELA block or a math block. So it should be a little bit different than the school year, where it's just review of materials, and hopefully students can be a little bit more independent.
Okay. And then just, is there any social ESY programs that we would normally run that we're not running this year, or?
So on students' IEPs, it's typically ELA, math, speech, OT. We do not have an IEP that calls for an SEL
Okay.
ESY program.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. And then, sorry, one more question. I think you mentioned in your presentation, which was fantastic, thank you, about surveys. So you surveyed out the parents?
We surveyed out the parents of the intensive needs. Nicole took care of that. She surveyed out the parents in the intent of students in the intensive need programming.
Just intensive needs, though, not the rest of the ESY program parents?
So typically, last summer, I shouldn't say typically, last summer at the end of the program, they received a survey for the first time. We wanted to see how we were doing. It was a paper copy. I'm going to, I have it on my calendar to do the same this year, but have it be emailed to them at the end of programming. Staff was surveyed the first week to ensure that they had everything that they needed in order to provide services. But I could certainly email parents now and ask them to fill out a survey, but my hope was to do it at the end so that we could gather email, but I could certainly do it first thing next week.
I wonder if it might, I mean, just thinking out loud, because this is such a different time this year, it might make sense to do it a little earlier so we could adjust as we move forward. I don't want to create a lot of extra work, but if it's not working right now, it might be nice to know sooner rather than later. So we could try to figure out how to adjust.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I'll send that out on Monday. It was something we were going to do anyways. So I'll do it a little bit earlier.
Okay. Yeah. And then if there's, again, things come back and we can try to adjust or help, because there's definitely, I guess, there's the difference between the intensive special needs and then the ESY students. So that the change for the ESY students who are getting it remotely, that's a new change for them. Obviously, it's a new change for everybody, right? I mean, I do understand that there's a pandemic and we're trying to figure out how to be safe. But there might be ways we could try to work better, but.
Excellent. And parents have been excellent, and the teachers have been excellent. They are readily available. We get emails every single day. I get maybe 4 to 5 emails from parents saying, hey, can I just get a 15-minute check-in? And the teachers immediately offer that check-in for that week. So, but yes, a mass survey to everyone is something we can certainly do.
Okay, good. Thank you. Any other questions for Lisa?
I just wanted to say thank you, Lisa, for your leadership. ESY is a challenge every year. I mean, you start planning like midwinter, and anyhow, you've done a really great job, and especially given everything going on and all the unknowns and concerns and worries, you've really done an exceptional job. So thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. I couldn't have done it without everyone's support. It has been a real team effort. So thank you.
Well, thank you for all your hard work. We really appreciate it. And thanks for joining us tonight. You are welcome to stay I guess, Amy, do we have any questions that have come in? No questions. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Take care, Lisa. Be safe. Okay. Next up, we are going to turn it over to Jay, and he's going to do a fall planning update. You should be able to share, Jay.
Oh, there we go. All right. So I've got I don't know how many slides, maybe 10 slides. As long as Laura, you're fine with it. I can't see everybody, so I don't know if somebody's got their hand up or whatnot. I'm always fine with people just jumping in and asking a question, and I'll try to remember to, after every slide or two, stop and see if you guys have any questions.
I'm fine with that.
Okay. So I'm going to give just an overview. I guess I'll go back. An overview of the work that we've been doing and that we are going to be doing over the coming weeks. It's definitely, obviously, it's an unprecedented challenge, easily the biggest challenge that as a leadership team that we have faced. I've only been here a decade, but it makes everything else look easy. It's fundamentally really, really hard to plan for things when you don't have the information that you need to do that planning. You have all seen, and we shared publicly statewide, that initial fall guidance that was released sometime in June. We haven't received a single document beyond that. So sometimes people think, the superintendent gets a secret document that gives you the inside info. That's just not the case. So we're going off that document and kind of our best thinking and trying to make it all add up. Does it all add up? No, not even close, really. at this point anyhow. So for July, we have the state charged superintendents and in turn school committees with submitting by July 31st 3 plans for reopening. So we've got to submit a plan using a template from the state. That the template hasn't been provided yet, but there will be a template for full return to in-person instruction, obviously abiding by all of the safety protocols. So in the most general sense, 6 feet distance when students are eating and at least 3 feet at all other times. So full return, and then a hybrid. Hybrid, I'm gonna go into it in more depth, but the most fundamental hybrid program, or the easiest way to think of it, is 1 week, half of the students attend in-person school, kind of like normal, with those precautions in place, when the other half are participating remotely from home. After that week, they flip-flop, and they just keep flip-flopping until you're told that you can return to full in-person at some point or go to full remote. Some districts are talking about doing, every other day, like half days, morning and afternoon. There's a lot of talk about how to best do it, but for our purposes, I'm going to talk about it in terms of 1 week on, 1 week off, or not off, 1 week doing remote. And then that third piece is full remote learning. This one, if you go back 2 months when we talked to the commissioner and DESE, they talked a lot about if we need to go back to remote learning, be it full-time or say we had to close down a school for, they haven't set a time, but say we have some confirmed cases and we need to stop having in-person at the high school, we would move to the full remote learning. They talked a lot about it being graded for sure and being more robust than what we were able to kind of pull off as a state with we had almost no warning when we jumped into it in March. They haven't defined that beyond, it's got to be more robust, have more, it doesn't have to be Zoom, but more interaction between students, and teachers. Sounds great. We're talking a great deal about what that would look like if we've got to go full remote learning, but that again should be paired in time, and we're running out of time, with a lot of information and hopefully resources from the state. So to do all of that, we've been working on putting together the 3 rough plans. Again, I don't know how rough because we haven't received that template. We've created a reopening committee, and we're going to use that committee. Originally, we were going to use it to look at all 3 plans that really the leadership team would develop, like a draft, and have parents, students, staff look at it in a focused way and poke holes and try to build up these 3 plans. There's no way, to really do this work, you'd be pushing it to do it in 6 months for 1 plan. So over maybe 4 or 5 weeks, come up with 3 full plans was beyond overwhelming. And I'm going to speak to that tonight. So that was our original thought. I'm going to change how we're going to use those reopening committees and run that thinking by you tonight. We have almost completed the cleaning of the schools. Our custodians and maintenance team have been in the schools for a few months now, and obviously we don't have any day-to-day trash, etc. They've been focused on doing essentially the summer cleaning as soon as they possibly could. So if we need to, we can move that furniture. We don't have to worry about the cleaning between almost now, let's say the end of July, and when we start up with staff and students, potentially at the beginning of September. Kristen's been phenomenal working with Anita on trying to figure out, as we develop those 3 rough plans, what we may need for positions to hire. In a nutshell, additional nursing, we're going to have additional custodial staffing, definitely during the day where we have 1 individual, and potentially in the evening for that shift. Bus monitors, which I can speak to, and we may need additional staff for remote learning. So we're in a real jam in that we have some monies provided through those 3 COVID-related buckets that we talked about that I can go into more. But we know there's going to be some monies there, probably about 1.4 million in total. But we don't yet know what the model is going to be. So we definitely need monitors, obviously, if we're having all the kids back between every run, which we have very little time between runs, almost none. We would need to clean each bus and get that ready for the pickup for their next run. So if they were doing GHS and G in Grafton Middle School, that's a run. After that, the bus needs to be cleaned. The driver can't do that individually, and the driver can't monitor the spacing and the wearing of the masks and everything else when the bus is in motion. But we can post because we need to get the ball rolling, but to actually pull the trigger and try to hire 17 monitors before we know what we are doing, you can, I'm beating a dead horse here, but you can see the problem we run into. We purchased very early on, we've purchased PPE supplies and materials from a number of different vendors, very much on purpose, so that we don't put all our eggs in one basket in case production and delivery is delayed. So Tony's done a really good job with that, also working in conjunction with Kristen, getting supplies in. Obviously, the number of supplies, the amount of supplies, and to some degree what you need is different, obviously, between having all the students back and having full remote. And it's somewhere in the middle for hybrid. So that, in a nutshell, is some of the things we've been struggling with July. Any questions so far?
I just wanted to remind our attendees that we will be taking questions after the committee has a chance to ask all of their questions. So if you want to hold off to the end, or just if you were wondering, we'll get to them, but we will be asking our questions first. I'll hold till I see your presentation, Jay. Thank you.
All right, so this is super rough. We know we have to submit by July 31st. The state has asked the districts don't commit to any one plan, which would be in normal times, any kind of plan like this. I mean, no matter what, you'd want to commit as soon as humanly possible. We're talking about, what, 7 weeks before September 1st. I mean, that's crazy. The state has asked that no district commits until that first week of August, which obviously gives them being the state and DESE a bit of a window to make some decisions. The way it's being stated right now is it seems like it's going to be left up to individual districts, which actually goes against what they worked hard back in March to move away from. You'll remember when COVID first started to hit, some districts kept having school, some stopped school and said, we're not coming back for a month. Some, I think we said for a week, and then we were going to see how it goes. Like, districts were all over the place, almost like a snow day. And then the state jumped in and said, nope, all right, everybody's shut down, doing remote, and set out some basic parameters for that. Up until a couple weeks ago, I would have bet my last cent that the state would make one decision as opposed to having individual districts, and just have a tremendous array of decisions and versions of whatever that new reality is in September. So if they do it, it looks like if they do one thing uniformly, it's going to be in early August. We would obviously need to communicate out to the staff and GPS community, provide as many resources as we can for, I'm getting countless questions, and I've said numerous times, I've never said I don't know more than I've said in the last month, ever in my life. We would have to modify whichever model we used has to be modified for our individual schools based on the age level, space, enrollment. If everybody was to return to school, we would have to do some significant removal of furniture. For example, at our pre-K through 1 buildings. They just have so much more stuff, so many more materials, and we have to move most of that out in order to be able to fit our relatively strong class sizes in those classrooms with the 3 feet and all of the parameters that are put upon us for spacing. The high school, we'd have to still take out some furniture, but not nearly as much. I mean, they have the iPads. It's just a very different environment. Some of our schools have bigger classrooms than others. When you jump to lunches, what kind of tables you have, like the round tables that we have with the individualized seats are actually, in normal times, phenomenal. The whole idea of the circle and inclusivity, et cetera, that's great. COVID related, it's horrible. Those long tables that you probably experienced when you were a kid in high school, those actually work out better for the spacing. So we're all over the place in the district, and therefore we're going to have to tailor our plans individually to each school. Obviously, we've got to implement whatever that plan is, and then I would hope to have guidance from the state on determining the criteria for changing plans dependent on health factors. So if things are trending in a fantastic way and we were hybrid, I would think we could then at some point have parameters on moving to everybody returning to school. We could have the second wave that they're talking about at some point. What triggers a move from everybody's in school to hybrid or hybrid to remote? That can't be handled like a snow day where it's just on me basically at 4 a.m. to do my best to make a decision. I already talked about that physical setup of the buildings and classrooms in terms of moving furniture. Depending on the model, we're going to have to install like plexiglass shields in certain offices. We're going to have to make some physical changes to buildings, certainly put up signs, make some hallways one way. A lot to do. And again, I'm going to say it 100 times. If you gave me a half year to do this, I think we could pull it off, but it would be tight. 7 weeks is something. Obviously, we've got to train staff on health and safety measures. There has been talk, I think it's fairly public, that the state DESE may decrease the number of days required. There's been no talk of any other modification, but maybe instead of 180 days, we would have to have students in classrooms, in schools for 177 days. That would free up a couple days for the staff to come in, work together to figure out what has to take place, how we're going to run lunches. If we do one-way hallways, the staff obviously need to know how that's all going to work. So it would be intensive, but there might be a couple of days where we could focus on training instead of the usual. We have one day, teachers set up, that next day we're off and running. There's no way to effectively do that without more training. How about questions so far? All right. Thought you guys would ask a lot.
I do, but I want you to get through your
All right, I'll keep
presentation.
going. I don't think I have too many more.
Taking notes. I'm going to save mine till you're finished.
Okay. So in terms of, this is my current thinking. This obviously, you're seeing it for the first time. This isn't the school committee. This isn't from the state. This is just your superintendent and his thinking today. That full in-person return would be exceedingly difficult. The spacing requirements that would make that you would have to enforce to make this option work would be almost impossible. The majority of the time, if we did it, the majority of the time would be spent dedicated to getting kids into school, lunches, and then navigating the logistical challenges related with dismissal, and then transportation. Just transportation alone, although we haven't received the transportation guidance yet, in Connecticut, where they're ahead of us in terms of putting out guidance. They're having one kid to a seat, and I think it's every other seat. And families or siblings could sit together, which is something, but that's not a huge, it doesn't save us. We're looking at like doubling the number of bus runs, if not tripling. Right? That alone would take the entire day. I don't see a way in terms of viability to, at this point, recommend a full in-person return. Again, here we are in July 14th, with the restrictions that the state has put out. If those are lessened between now and, say, the beginning of August, it might be a whole different ballgame. And I'm going with some unknowns. Obviously, the busing is a big one. But right now, that's my thinking on that. Full remote, that's the easiest to implement just because we did it. I think we could probably do it better. And if we had some state supports in terms of maybe a platform or different software that we could access, I'm confident that we could take it to that next level. So we've at least kicked the tires on full remote, obviously. With that, there's minimal student-staff interaction. There's so many challenges with full remote, not just on the provision of full remote end, but obviously on the student end. You guys know all this, but not every student has somebody at home with them that can do their work. A lot of people, even more people, are trying to go back to work now. We're going to talk more about it, but it's going to result in huge daycare issues. I totally get that. They have talked about, they being DESE has talked about, and this isn't recently, this is back a few weeks, but the possibility of if districts were to have to provide remote instruction, full-time remote, they would still want our neediest students to potentially go to schools and receive in-person instruction at school. Like not just once in a while, but like every day, 5 days a week, like a regular schedule. For the most part, that would be they defined it as high need, and it's a way it's marked in the IEPs, but for the most part, it's going to be our intensive needs programs. So we'd have to do full remote and at the schools still run a good chunk of special education programming and kind of figure that out. Whether they're going to stick with that, I don't know. I don't know if they know right now. So that was the full remote and the full in-person. I would like to take, now this goes back to the work that the reopening committee is about to launch into. I had mentioned that I originally was thinking not one model was emerging as probably the most probable and the one that we need to investigate the most. And then having a committee work on 3 different plans at once is just almost impossible. That was a couple weeks ago. As things have developed, I'd like to have them focus primarily on the hybrid model. I believe if you ask me right now what we could do from a schooling perspective, we could run the hybrid model and that would provide the highest level of services to our students. And would definitely allow us to have the ability to abide by all of the regulations around health and safety. So again, with this, students would alternate in person with remote. They'd flip-flop every other week. We're not married to that at this point, but just for ease of discussion, let's say it's every other week. Some of the positives would free up plenty of space, et cetera, for our special education students who qualify. It would allow for, it would double the level of student-staff interaction. The students in the in-person piece for that week, we're looking at classes probably 11 to 15, I'd say on average. So good class sizes, a lot of individualized and small group interaction, and individualized support. Obviously, I wish that was every single week for I'd love 180 days, but that may not be the reality, at least in the beginning of the fall. We could, with the hybrid model, we could pretty easily provide that busing using the 4-tier model that we currently run. So the basic times, the basics of transportation as we know it would be in place. One caveat, obviously, they haven't put out the transportation guidance on that. So if it's, I don't know, it has to be 3 seats between every kid or something that's far more restrictive than I'm assuming it will be, that could change. But I think we could pull that off pretty well. We would still run all of the 17 buses. They would still cover the entire town. And again, the times should be largely the same. Obviously, I touched on it, but it connects with the ability to meet those health and safety requirements where we almost double our space availability. Not quite, but about a 40% increase in space availability. It gives us a great deal of flexibility where we have almost no flexibility with the in-person instruction. And then lastly, food service would be a million times more manageable. We think, depending on a couple things, we think we could largely, almost all of the kids could eat in the cafeteria. Again, spaced out, and it would be far less time consuming. If we were to go to the everybody in person, we would have to use both the cafeteria and our classrooms to get that 6 feet distance between students. And that means we've got to deliver the great majority of our meals to the classrooms. It doesn't sound that like it's that much of a challenge, but in a school with 700 kids in grades 2 through 5 or 2 through 6, even with the cafeteria in normal times, it's a challenge every day. Now doing it classroom-based, the full in-person, that would take up a tremendous amount of time. We could do it, it would look more or less like, with more space, like regular lunch with the hybrid model. And then some of the cons, and these aren't all the pros and these aren't all the cons. The remote learning that we'd be providing, if we can, would obviously, we're hoping to have it be graded and more robust. We would work between now and actual implementation to prepare for connecting the remote experience with the previous week's in-person learning. So some of that in-person learning is going to be setting up for that remote learning, be it projects, be it whatever it is, instead of students and parents having to just depend on an email when everything was remote. We'd have time to basically launch into that next remote week and build up as much continuity as we could, which was a real struggle between March and June. Obviously, a huge issue with anything short of all of the students returning are parental and staffing needs around daycare in particular. People are trying to go back to work. I mean, you get it, I get it. This every other week, if that's what it ends up being, or some version of that, it's going to be a real challenge, no question about it. I'm almost done. Somebody had asked, I think it was I had been emailed actually about this. It was in reference to a survey that we put out a while back. It was in the end of June, asking, as parents, at that time, did they plan to send their children to school to engage in instruction in the fall? DESE had said, we're going to, statewide, have an option where if somebody, for whatever reason, doesn't feel comfortable or has an immune issue, whatever it might be, if they don't want to go to in-person or go to hybrid, they could receive all of their instruction for the year through remote learning. Ours came back at about 17.2%. Again, this was super early. We had to put the survey out, but it was as fair as it could be. But understandably, parents at the end of June didn't know what they were saying yes to or no to. In terms of what would in-person look like, in June, I think more people were hoping, COVID would just kind of disappear and everything's great and masks were a thing of the past. We are going to resurvey in a much more detailed way, much more individualized way, once we know kind of what the fall is going to look like. But that 17%, that comes out to be I think it was about 500 kids out of our total population. So that's quite a few kids, and it was uniform. We did break it down by grade level. And Tracy showed that, you know, there were peaks and valleys, but it was pretty consistent pre-K through 12 in terms of those who would want to be just remote. So we've been talking about and working on, with everything else, our thinking around what do we do with those kids who are full remote, be it 500, maybe if things get worse, you know, anything could happen even in 3 weeks in terms of the status of the virus. It could be 1,000 kids, it could be 100 kids, it could be 30 kids. But we want to have a plan for how we're going to meet their needs, because if we're doing hybrid, they'd obviously miss out on the in-person piece. So they would just be kind of left to drift, if you will, if we just threw them into the mix. We don't want to do that. We want to be really purposeful about it. And we've been calling it the Remote Learning Academy, just as I don't know if we'll stick with that, but a term for the kids who, for whatever reason, are all year remote. So that's just another layer that we're kind of struggling with. I think this is my last slide. So in the hybrid model, I think it was fairly straightforward, but just so you have the visual, you have group A and group B. They flip-flop every 5 days, theoretically. And then on the bottom, you can see that high needs special education programming. Again, if the state sticks with what they put out a few weeks ago, I think it was, that would take place, you know, across the board, just like regular school, if you will. And all right, so here's my recommendation. I've touched on all of this. I'm going to put in, you're going to see the plans. I haven't seen the template. I'm guessing they're pretty generic. I think what we've already developed would far exceed what DESE's asking for. In a nutshell, they want to know what's feasible for a district and what's not. I want to focus our majority of efforts on that development of the hybrid model for GPS, have the reopening committee really focus on that. We'll certainly talk about the full, everybody coming back and full remote, but that real focus I'd like to have on that hybrid. I guess the easiest way to put it, guys, is more or less we know how to do, we've never done it with all of the different health restraints on us, but we're very familiar with everybody going back, all the staff being there, that, okay. And we've at least kicked the tires and we've got a pretty good running start with full remote. But hybrid, nobody in this district, I certainly have zero experience with running it and doing it. So I'd love to really develop that model as much as we possibly can in the short amount of time that we have. DESE's going to obviously communicate with districts, with superintendents, and with school committees. At some point, we're going to have to make a commitment. If they're not going to tell us what to do, we're going to have to say, first week of August, this is what we're choosing, and this is what it's going to look like. I'd like to communicate to parents. It's a tricky one, but put out, hopefully this gets some coverage, but put out another update this week, basically updating parents as to where we stand now. Obviously, we have like the Mount Everest of questions, and I have almost no answers other than my best thinking. But to get people to start thinking about what could be, understandably, many parents want their students to go back, but they want it to be done safely. I do think when we survey again, probably late July, early August, whenever we think we know what we're going to do and what the state wants us to do, I think there's going to be an uptick, probably significant, in those who are worried about sending their kids back and reluctant to actually do it. I think the end of June seemed to, September 1st seemed like a long ways away. When we're 4 weeks out, if the tenor of what I see in terms of social media and the news coverage, unless that changes significantly, I would expect that we see that 17% increase. I certainly could be wrong. Obviously, we're going to continue to update the GPS community. certainly going to share anything as it's received. In terms of guidance, I think that will be hard to miss when it does come out. And we're going to continue to develop not only the remote programming that's tied to the hybrid model, but again, for those students who, the remote piece for those students who are going to be full-time remote for the year, and kind of you can't get much of a running start on any of this at this point in June 14th, but we're going to do our best to have that as set as we can possibly make it. And with that, I'm done talking. Well, I'm not done talking, but I'm done with my slides.
All right, I'll take questions from the committee before we move to the Q&A. Liz, I see your hand up first.
Yeah, Jay, if you could go back to the previous slide, I just wanted to clarify. So this hybrid model, so for week 2, is that meant to say group A?
Yeah. You know what? I totally messed that up. That's 100% my error. I apologize. So week 1, group A, they're in person. Should be group A. Then next week, week 2, they're remote. And then the 3rd week, they go in person. 4th week, remote. And just the group B is flipped. Thank you. I will fix that. I apologize.
People at home too, just to make sure. But
Yep.
Amy?
So when you talk about remote, Jay,
Yep. Full remote?
no, I'm sorry, the hybrid model.
Yep.
So the first week of school, kids in group A go to school.
Right.
Kids in group B, are they waiting a week?
No,
Are they?
No, we would, if we do the hybrid, I'm glad you asked that. I didn't really speak to it. Depending, every single piece of this is tricky, but if we assume, like I've run numbers on just about every different scenario, but if we did hybrid, you have half the kids, obviously, in each one of the 2 groups. You actually have less than that once you pull out, let's say it's 17% of the kids who are doing the remote learning academy, or they're doing full remote. Almost think of them going to their own little school to do the full remote. If you take them out, our numbers decrease pretty significantly, which is good. We need that for the space part. So we wouldn't need, say we have 6 teachers, we do have 6 teachers in grade 3 at Millbury Street. We could, depending on the numbers, have 4 teachers. So we have 6 teachers at that school. We could use 4 teachers to do the in-person instruction and say have classes of 14. And then take 2 teachers and have them focused on the students in the remote, on the remote week. Does that make sense? So it's not just, otherwise, there's no way that you would be waiting, if you will. Like you wouldn't have that direct contact with the teacher. We'd have a teacher with, say, 24 students. And he or she in at 3rd grade, that teacher on the remote week is going to have that class of 20, whatever it is, 24 kids, and be able to focus on moving them forward as much as you can during remote. I'm going to guess the day is going to be longer. It's going to be more synchronous. There's going to be more direct contact. It's not going to be kind of that half-day model that we used from March to June. So is it obviously nowhere near perfect, but we're going to be able to have somebody who is a 3rd grade teacher at that school who is connected to those teachers providing the in-person. They're on the same team, that when they move to the remote week, can talk about the projects, can have some lessons, can do more school-like work with more interaction. That's the idea.
Rahul, and then Liz, I saw your hand next. You're muted, Rahul.
Okay, Jay, I have a question and then a suggestion probably, and it's a weird suggestion. My question first is, do we have to go back to DESI only related to these 3 models, or can we come up with a weird plan that I have for you?
I'm sure we can send them anything, but it's these 3 models that they've asked us to investigate.
Okay, my idea, again, it's weird, but my thought was that we start the school with full class only for the juniors and the seniors, like for the first month, for example. That way we have more building, more resources, and we have like the grown-up kids. They can maintain the distance. They don't have to go out and play. They don't have to interact with their friends. And let's say a month down the line, we feel safe in the sense like today we got 300 cases of COVID. And we don't know how much more or less we'll be getting after that, after a month or so, after 2 months. Then let's say after a month, we feel the cases are coming down and kids are okay with the classroom teaching, for example. Then we can open the school for the sophomores and the freshmen. So, I mean, it's like phases, just like the city is like the state, we are opening the state in phases. Something on those lines. I'm not sure if that's possible, but that was just my idea.
I can definitely look into it. One of the challenges right off the top of my head is we do have a lot of classes with students with mixed grades. I mean, you could have a freshman. Typically, the freshmen are going to be more together, but you certainly can have sophomores with juniors. So you would have to schedule the entire building around. It would be something, but I can look at it.
Okay.
Liz?
Yeah, my question was sort of a follow-up to Amy's. Just sorry for harping on the week on, week off, but I was just trying to more fully understand. So is the week that they're in school going to be, so the kids that are in school and the kids that are working remotely, are they going to be in sync so that they're learning the same thing? One's remote, one's at home, or is it going to be that they're learning things in the classroom and then the follow-up is virtual, and then just that first week you're kind of doing something different to you know.
I probably should have been more clear. We haven't created this model.
Oh, sure.
I'm just looking to almost permission to go and do that work. We've been thinking about this 24/7. The idea would be, in essence, to have much more connectivity between the two experiences, being that on week and the off week, and make it uniform as much as we can, and almost make the most of the remote piece. I mean, call a spade a spade. The in-person part will be great for that week. Not great because everybody's got a mask and it's going to be stressful, etc. But real small class sizes, etc. And then how do we make the most of? We'd love to just have that, but how do we make the most of what has to be that remote week? Obviously, we're doing that not because we want to, but we need that space. So continue on with teachers from that grade level, focus just on those kids. I would think we would be learning on both weeks, but maybe with that learning, because you can only do so much like Zoom. Say you had Zoom type of interaction for 2 hours. If it's a 6-hour day, maybe some of it isn't, I'm making this up, Liz, but like project-based, based on the learning that's been ongoing, but have the actual project work, instead of doing that in person, maybe more of that focus is done on the remote week. And if a kid gets stuck or what have you, as they would in a regular classroom, what's the next step? I'm confused. They've got at least 2 teachers, probably some paras as well, to go to for resource, and they can connect, because in theory, if I was that 3rd grade teacher, I'd have 25 kids. I could do a Zoom class. I could say, I'm going to be on here, work on this project for the next hour, and just, you've got the link, Zoom, I'm here, connect with me and ask questions as you would a student walking up to the teacher's desk. But that's just off the top of my head. We'd have to, we don't have much time, but that's what we've never done before, and we would be working to figure out. Part of it, I don't have any kind of hard numbers. I don't know if they even exist. I haven't even seen a survey about what districts are thinking yet. But most of the districts that I've been in contact with they're thinking more or less mirrors what I'm discussing with you tonight. Like, they're thinking they could probably come closest to pulling off that hybrid model. And that's the one they know they haven't done. Nobody's doing this hybrid model on a regular basis. And they're putting most of their energies into figuring out how to make hybrid work to the best degree possible for kids and maintaining staff and student safety. And it might be that we just can't even pull it off. That's the work ahead of us.
Jen?
All right. So first of all, I like the idea of the hybrid. I agree with you that if we're going to put a lot of our effort into developing a model, this is probably the best model to put all of our efforts in, especially because we have such a short time period. And I think the hybrid model will give us the most fluidity, whether if we have to change to remote or change to full in person. So it's sort of that middle model, kind of make it easier, hopefully, for us to change what we need to. So I do agree with this. Few questions. One is the remote learning hiring, is that separate from the remote learning academy? I'm not sure if the remote learning academy, is that headed by the district or is that headed by the state? I wasn't sure.
Well, it would be, that's a good question. There was talk, I say originally, probably a month ago, it feels like forever ago, but maybe 2 months ago. There was talk about the state offering either a state-built or a privatized platform for those kids, where they would be taken off of basically the district and kids would go to whatever this is, a website, and fourth grade would just be off and running, and you're committed to that for a year. I mean, there are online schools in the state that do things along those lines. There's been very little talk about that lately, and we don't want to wait. Like, I'm worried that that's not going to come from the state, other than like just a resource to have. Like, they might make some resources available, but one platform where we don't have to worry about was the hope. And with every passing day, I'm thinking that's not going to come to fruition. So when we're doing everything else, Tracy and a few other people have been working on figuring out what that individualized platform would look like. We don't know how many students would opt for that platform. So whatever that is, we don't even know what it looks like. But if that number, we're going off the 17%, but our staffing is going to shift. It could happen where, I haven't figured out the exact numbers that are like a nightmare scenario, but a big enough number to require some significant staffing on the remote learning. So the kids doing that all year. And we've got a staff hybrid. So if it's like a third, we're going to be, I think we'll be stretched too thin. And we've got to hire. And we've got to hire to meet the needs of numerous models taking place at once. If we do the hybrid, any model that we do, any way we go, we're going to have potentially multiple things taking place at the exact same time. So we've got special needs programming for some students, quite a few students, over 100 at each of the schools. And that's not just kids and a teacher. We're talking about support staff. We're talking about administration. There's a lot, specialists. There's a lot that goes into that. I mean, you just heard Lisa talking about ESY. It's staff intensive, very purposeful. So that's going to happen. Plus, we've got in-person. Plus, for those weeks, at the same week, we've got to do the remote learning for the other half. And then we've got to meet the needs of the kids who are doing remote learning all year. So we've got 4 things going on in just this one model. It's beyond overwhelming. So we anticipate there's a scenario where we're going to have to hire. We'd have to hire, I don't know if it would be for one grade level or it might be for a tier. It could be a 7th and 8th grade teacher who we need to either do the remote or do in person. We very well could have staff who are unable, due to a wide range of possible issues, return to school. We've had a few that have let us know that's going to be the case, and we may or may not, depending on their certification, their experience, etc., have them do the remote. That may or may not work. That's not set in stone. And then as we get closer, like I worry that parents, the way things are going now, I'm going to guess that 17% is going to increase in the next few weeks, unless something significant changes. If that happens with parents, I'm going to assume it's going to happen with staff as well. So if we have staff tell us in mid-August they're not coming back because of fears of contact, what have you, we've got to be like up. It's crazy. We'd have to hire with everybody else in mid-August for a September 1st start.
So that's my concern. Yeah.
Of the level of concerns in the complexity, but every single piece has like 5 things connected to it, and we have little clarity in terms of there's. I mean, other than we don't have a single document other than that initial fall guidance. Busing, if I'm way off in my thinking of what they're going to do with busing, they don't build buses. That takes a year. We're not getting more than 17 buses. There's no way around that. You say, oh, everybody drive their kid to school. As somebody who does traffic duty, that's a massive, massive issue. I bet you if pushed, I could come up with 500 pretty big issues pretty quickly. It's overwhelming, no question about it. Did I answer your question, by the way?
No, yeah, you did. I mean, I think, I guess I didn't know it was going to be district or the state, but that you answered
now
that.
It looks like district. We haven't heard a word saying it's state. I think they went out to bid for a few things, but again, they look like more resources that we could utilize, and that would be, cost effective and great, but that's a world away from, we got this, just give us the names and we're going to contact the kids and we'll be off and running. We've got to, until we're told otherwise, we have to provide for that. And again, any of those things alone in mid-July, I'd say you're crazy. And now we're doing it those are just the ones we've touched on. There's just countless layers to this.
So kind of touching with what you were saying is the fact that we're submitting something by August 1st or whatever that is. But then is that going to really provide us enough time to do any of this? And so that's what I'm more afraid of. And even just the scheduling of the high school or any schools, like scheduling all the students is just a massive logistical nightmare too.
Kind of like what Lisa talked about with ESY. We're spending a tremendous deal of time, and huge thanks to the entire leadership team and the support staff at the different schools, secretarial, office staff. Everybody's been putting in like crazy hours to run. Like instead of doing the one schedule, we're running numerous schedules for numerous potential scenarios. The amount, just doing one schedule for each building is daunting every summer. It's harder and more complex than people think. Now we're doing that numerous times for what if scenarios. So we've replicated everything numerous ways. I'm sure we haven't covered everything. We did the same thing with busing. We met with AA. We've met with Whitson's and gone over different possibilities, knowing full well that the best we can do is try to be as prepared as possible for what we don't know yet in terms of guidance and numbers.
And then one last question, thank you, is you mentioned having the students be 6 feet apart in the CAF. Is that the thought also for the classroom, or are you thinking 3 feet?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Anytime the students are eating and take their masks off, it goes to 6 feet.
Okay.
Automatically.
Okay, thank you. That's it, Laura.
Liz?
So we have the reopening committee and they're meeting. Do we know yet they're meeting?
Yep, I'm doing 2 introductory meetings, figuring, people are on vacations and stuff. One tomorrow evening at 7, where I'm just going to kind of go over the basics of where we're at. And then the next morning, Thursday morning at 10, and then we've already formed right after this meeting, if you guys are okay with at least the focus on hybrid, I've got an email ready to go to them where I let them know that's where most of our efforts are going to be focused. And we've got 3 subcommittees within that overarching committee. So operations, health and safety, or safety and wellness. I'm drawing a blank on the third, and this is, academics. So those are the three groups. And then I've got an advisory board with a number of community members, some former superintendents, some doctors in town, some parent volunteers, and students. So once we start producing some working plans and have ideas, I'm going to be vetting what's developed through the board to get, poke holes in it, work our thinking with this group that's not necessarily in the weeds 24/7. So we've already got co-chairs for the 3 subcommittees are set, and the committees are set. Once we finish up on Thursday at 11, the subcommittees will be off and running, and they're going to meet within the next, certainly within the next week.
And then we're going to get reports back from them at our next meeting,
Yeah, I'll
the 28th. We'll have to,
yeah.
okay. And then we'll have to, at our next meeting, we'll have to be prepared to decide what we're going to present.
Yeah, we may have to.
Couple days.
Yeah, we may have to create a new meeting. I forget off the top of my head when we scheduled our next one, but there's a very high likelihood, even if we can get 3 members, that the state, we know the 31st is set. That's the due date for the 3 models. And I think once they make up, they're under a tremendous amount of stress and pressure and unknowns and politics, etc. They are keenly aware that we are way behind and there's a ridiculous amount of pressure and need for information. So I think they're going to move. When they move, I think they're going to move pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. So I could see us, as superintendent, I might get the heads up a day or 2 early, maybe, of what's coming, and then be able to set up a meeting that we can act. Like, the quicker we can act, the better once we get information.
Mm-hmm. And then, unless,
yep, go ahead.
Can I ask another one? Sorry. And then when you are presenting this hybrid model to that committee, tonight we've been talking about the week on, week off model. Is that something that is sort of set in stone? Is that, the way you've been describing it, it makes sense to me, and I can understand how that would especially work with the busing situation, and versus something else, like I've seen some other schools have looked at, mornings versus afternoons, or every other day, or some other kind of model like that. But it sounds like you like the week on, week off model best. We're going to.
I'm certainly not tied to it. I use it just because it's the easy. Like, once we haven't obviously even started working. I think it's the most generic, if you will. Back a couple months back, there was one meeting. I forget if this was public or not, but the initial thinking was, if a district was to do a hybrid for health reasons, in terms of exposing our staff who were there continuously to new groups of kids on a more regular, every other day, every 2 days, you swap. The thought was that the staff were more at risk for more kids, more interaction, more risk. I don't know if that's still the thinking, but originally that was paired with the 1 week and the 1 week. And with different groups coming in, you could, again, at the end of that week, basically Friday, maybe into the weekend, you're cleaning the whole school and resetting for another group that comes in for that entire week. That was kind of the thinking. I don't know if that's still going to be, when they come out with it, guidance, if that's going to still be the guidance, or they say, do whatever you want, do every other day, do half days, do every third day. We're going to find out. Tracy did a good job. I haven't had a chance to read it, but she reached out to a number of area districts just to get a sense of where people were at. And it kind of ran the gamut. Most, if not all, the great majority were looking at hybrid, and we're at least talking about, if it wasn't the 1 week, some were the 1 week off, 1 week on, some were, as you said, Liz, every other day, every 3 days. I don't know right now. I couldn't, if you take the medical stuff out, medical stuff aside, there's probably a good argument. There could be a good argument for a different setup, and I'd be very open to that, as I'm sure the committee, you guys would be. I expect that we'll be able to lay out options that were considered and get feedback.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. I think as a working right now from home parent myself, I understand the difficulty that parents might face having kids home 1 week and gone 1 week, but there's so many challenges with all of these models. So there's, like you've mentioned, good and bad with everything. But
and I probably haven't stressed it enough, but just before this kind of goes out into the ether, there's a very good chance that the state in early August may dictate, as they did with the closure, what districts are expected to do. We just don't know. So until we get guidance, we are asked to do our best, do our best work, research, and work the plans as much as we possibly can, and we're certainly doing that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm just going to jump in, but I'll let anybody else go with questions. But I did want to stress that this is not final. The reason why we're putting this together is so that group of teachers, students, parents, there's a good group of people working to ask the questions to try to flesh this out. And Jay, I'm comfortable with the hybrid model, I guess. I mean, this is the one, for some reason, and for me, and I think I talked about it last time, I just have a lot of questions, and they're mostly around staffing. I'm concerned, I guess, for our teachers to come in, and they're the ones who are just going to face everybody. So the kids will be half and half or less, because I do agree with you. I think, especially because we're up here in the north, we open later than many other school districts. I think as school districts open, we're definitely going to see a surge. I think there's probably going to be more panic. You can see the panic on social media. I think we've all read the same things. We're seeing the same questions over and over. And I think, just for me, I can't wrap my head around the teachers in the classroom. And making sure that they're protected, and what happens if one of them gets sick, and if one of their children gets sick, we have a lot of trouble getting subs under normal circumstances. So that's where my big questions are answered, and I know you can't answer them now, but I just wanted to.
Yeah, they're both good questions. We are assuming throughout that we won't be able to get subs. That's just an assumption. I'm really comfortable making that assumption.
Yeah.
Going again back a couple months, if there was a diagnosed case, student or staff in the school, the guidance still is on paper to shut down that school. As I recall, that the time that the school had to be shut down there was a range, and I remember at the time thinking it seemed odd, like they hadn't nailed that down. I want to say it was between 5 and 14 days or something. If that is still in place, how does that work? It's a massive question for us. What was the other piece? And then I'm assuming that's the whole school. So then that special education programming then you're jumping from what was supposed to be almost a permanent at school program. You're now, out of the blue, if you will, jumping to remote with those students in that program. I mean, massive, massive problems and challenges. I think it's also wise, and I probably didn't state this enough, even if everything goes in a great way and we start the school year with all kids and we're feeling good about things, there's a very good chance that in the future we're going to need the hybrid model again if there's a spike in the middle of the winter. If to have this at least as a tool for us to fall back to, pretty quickly, I think is critical for us, and we don't have it. If we had to go to remote tomorrow, it wouldn't be pretty, but we could do it. If we had to have everybody back, obviously, if you can decrease the restrictions, we can do that. It's this middle model that I think we need to work to develop, and it's not going to be perfect, but it's something I think that could be a reality for us.
Yeah. No, and I think it makes sense because you can use any of the plan. Like I definitely want to see our remote learning plan kind of expanded on that we've talked about. And I know people have been working on that to improve upon what we were able to do in the spring. And I think, I'm frustrated with I think you guys are doing an amazing job and I want to thank you. I know how hard everybody's working under impossible situation in the summer. So I thank you very much. I'm disappointed in the overall leadership in the state. I get that it makes sense that not all districts are equal, as we know. And so a one size fits all approach probably doesn't work. But I think what this model is doing is it's pointing out all of the societal challenges that we face. School districts, Lexington, I think, was able to put out some plan and people are using that. School districts that have different resources, that have more, you're seeing it all over. Parents that can help with their kids at home. It's overwhelming. I think I told you earlier in the week, I'm overwhelmed and I can't imagine how you are. And I'm grateful that we have all of you doing this. But
some districts have put out, Lexington, for example, and we've got a lot of good resources to use.
Yeah.
They struggle with the exact same problem if you really read it. They basically say they're going in Lexington, I think they're going hybrid or remote based on a few different factors, depending on how you look. But like transportation, they can put out their best thinking on it, which is great. But we don't have the state guidance yet on the transportation. Do you know what I mean?
Right. No, I know. I know.
The plans that exist there's a lot of gray in those plans. And that's kind of the devil.
In the details. Well, I'm asking those questions because I think a lot of people see that and I understand. I'm a parent as well. I want to know what's going on also, but it's just, we're not quite there yet. So I think that I'm excited for these opening committees to dive in and do work and report back. I'm certainly open to have a meeting whenever we need to, can work together to get it out. Okay, so I know we have a lot of questions from the audience. Do we have any more questions from the committee? I did ask Amy to kind of monitor them. I'm not sure if any of them have been asked. I did see a couple people raise their hand. I would appreciate it if you could just put it in the Q&A. We're not going to call on people to speak. So if you could type it in and Amy, I will turn it over to you if you want to use your best judgment here. And then I am cautious on the time. So it's 8:30. We have a full agenda tonight, which I apologize for. But some of this maybe if we can't get to all the questions, you can certainly send us an email and we can get to them. I'm guessing a lot of the answer is that we don't know yet as well, but I do want to give people an opportunity to ask questions. I'm glad that you're here listening. So Amy, I'll turn it to you.
All right. So we have a question from Terry Turgeon about speaking to the idea of using non-teachers for teaching tasks, for example, librarians, art, and PE. I'm not quite sure what that means. But
we'd certainly be maxing out our use of staff, no question. I think any kind of remote, I think our paraprofessionals did a really good job March to June, like working with special education teachers to connect with kids. I know my daughter worked closely with a paraprofessional almost on a daily basis, like a check-in. Like no matter what model we end up using, I think that's going to be critical. Doing more, maximizing the use of the staff we have, I think it makes all the sense in the world. There is talk on the state level, I think it's already gone into place, that they're basically stretching certification requirements. So that you could kind of you could utilize more staff in more instructional ways next year. But again, that's like everything else I'm talking about is like theoretical. I haven't actually seen it yet. But yeah, that's a good idea.
We had a question about busing. Do you anticipate this is going to require more busing?
Amy, can you read who their questions are from, please?
Yeah, sorry, this is Terry Turgeon again. Will it require
you.
more, will it require more busing? Will we consider asking parents to transport and do reimbursement, i.e. special education?
Great question. It all depends on the model. If we all go back at once, and again, we surveyed this, but it was back in June. We're going to resurvey and really ask for specific information. There's certainly, and on top of it all, we don't have the guidance on the transportation. If it's 2 seats between every kid, and we're talking about 10 kids on a bus or something, you'd have to do bus runs all day, which would just cause sheer chaos. So if that was the case, in reality, we would have to ask parents to transport their kid. I don't know if we'd be looking at reimbursement. I'm not sure how that would work or if we could pull that off, but it's a thought. I hadn't thought of any kind of reimbursement part. We do then run into massive traffic issues, like the amount of time it's going to take to get, like, I think they're all bad, but North Street with one entrance, one exit, where we're going to have the buses and then say 5 times the traffic. Like, holy smokes, that's going to be something. Transportation is a huge concern.
Also from Terry, what is your plan if a large number of teachers decide to apply for FMLA because they're either at risk or decide they want to go on leave without pay?
Yep, so we'd have to use some of that 1.4 million in COVID monies for staffing, for programming related to COVID, PPE, et cetera. So we'd have to be kind of ready for it. And Kristen's been great with that. The problem is, say we find out mid-August that somebody's going to be out for 12 weeks plus. Assume we don't have subs. I think it was actually Terry's question. We'd have to utilize any staffing that we have to cover those needs, and then probably at the same time be looking to at least hire. We're not going to be able to cover everything if that number's high, but we'd have to hire. Again, we're going to be in competition with probably every other district that's facing the same exact challenge at the same exact time. So I'm not giving in. I don't have any. I have answers, but I don't have answers. I wish I'm dying for the question where I just know it, and
I'm working on it.
Yeah, give me
I got one for you. Ready? Okay.
Like this.
You know this answer.
Oh, yeah.
Martina Arndt asks, is there any news on a moratorium on the MCAS for the 2020-2021 year?
There's no news. That question gets asked a lot at the state level at DESE, and consistently they have said that as of now, they're not touching it.
Yep.
That's very, 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 very tied to federal mandates and federal monies. Not that it can't happen, but it's not just, I know you know this, but not just like a mom and pop, nice to do at the state level. Not doing state testing, when you look at it from the federal perspective, is a big deal. And maybe nationally they'll do something. But just getting that waiver was it certainly seemed like quite a task. And that was when we had all schools, like closing. So that's my answer.
Amy, I'm going to ask, maybe we take 2 more questions, and then anyone who has any follow-up questions can send Jay an email or post it on our Facebook page if they're looking for public answers. I just looked at them. I think a lot of them, we don't know the answers yet, and we're going to be reporting back real soon. And I know it's hard, and this is frustrating to not know answers. But we do have a full agenda, and I think a lot of the work is going to be done. Is that okay with the rest of the committee? You feel okay with that? Okay.
And people can certainly email me.
Yeah.
And use that Facebook page, but unfortunately, we just have so few hard answers right now. So
this might be one for Tracy, actually. Ready, Tracy? What improvements in platforms, connections with students, technology are in place for the fall, specifically around grading or in-person video connections?
So that's a great question, and we were just discussing it a couple of days ago. So Neil and I are putting out PD probably the end of this week that will start the following week and run until school begins at the end of August. First on a video platform called Loom. So we're going to teach the teachers how to create videos of their instruction. So they are providing direct instruction in a way that they were not able to for the most part during remote learning this spring. So that's going to go out district wide. In addition to that, we're going to rerun. You may remember that we did a fair amount of PD around some online tools that really supported student engagement and participation in lessons. We're going to rerun those PD workshops as well. And finally, Neil is going to, and part of his team, they're going to do some support around Schoology because we're going one-to-one, particularly in grade 6.
Great.
Amy, I'm going to interrupt you. Actually, I just kind of thought of an idea. I just copied and pasted all the questions in a document, so you don't actually have to email us. We can make sure we put together maybe a Q&A to post, so that way we can get all your answers for you. And I don't know why I would make you email. So we can work on that together and get it done pretty quickly. So Amy, why don't you take one more, and then we'll make sure we get all the answers. We appreciate the questions, and we can just put them up on a Q&A on our website. Does that work?
Yep. Has there been any research done? This is from Cheryl. Any research done to see how many students can be accommodated in each school given the current restrictions from the state?
yeah, we've done that numerous times with different, from 3 feet to 6 feet. Every space, we have those figures ad nauseum, and we did that pretty early. That was like anything that we could kind of get a jump on and do that had an answer. I think we've investigated and done. So we do have those numbers. That's what makes me think that I'm fairly confident that it would be a tremendous challenge for us to hold in full in-person instruction with the restrictions as they are right now. And that's why I'm recommending we take a good hard look at the hybrid and really work that.
Okay. Can I put out just one more, Laura?
Yeah.
Okay. What will happen to medically fragile special needs students if the other special needs are full-time? Who will do remote? I feel like that's an important one to get out there.
So just say that one more time.
What will happen to medically fragile special needs students if the other special needs students are full-time? Who will do remote? So I think by full-time, she means, this is Allison Wilson, I think she means the hybrid.
So we would either have to, we're going to have to use existing staffing and probably hire. Some of that does go back to, I mean, there's a possibility that we've talked about either in the hybrid piece or with intensive special needs, having those kids stay in that program, we could have a lot of those, we could have a high percentage, we don't know yet, that don't want to go to in-person and want to participate in a remote. So we could, again, have two different layers right there. Never mind somebody getting ill. We're already going to have to provide basically double those services and provide remote at the same time for those students that we're doing in person. So that goes back to the hiring piece as well.
Great, thank you, Amy. And thank you, everybody. So we'll get to all the questions that we weren't able to answer, and stay tuned. I think Jay's done a phenomenal job of communicating as we know information, and we will continue to do that. And I'd like to thank in advance the groups that are going to be diving in more on this and working on it. I also, for the committee, we have personnel update. I'd like to recommend that we move that to our next meeting. If Kristen doesn't mind, I know she put together a presentation. I had asked to put this on the agenda just because of summer hiring and things, but I think it's not 100% necessary that we talk about it tonight, if that's okay with the committee. And Kristen? Seeing nods. Okay. Great. So we're going to move on to our anti-racism resolution. So we had talked about that last week as a first reading. The committee, I think, was good with it, except for a couple of typos that were in it, which I think I hopefully fixed. And I did send it out, and I hadn't received any feedback, except I heard from one person that it was great and she was very pleased with it. I'm trying to pull this up on my screen so I can just share it one more time for us. We have, so again, this is something that a lot of our committees in our area, in the state, are passing. This is to make sure that as we are approaching our curriculum, approaching how we conduct business with the districts, our social emotional, how we teach, how we talk to each other, to make sure that we are really addressing the kind of undercurrent of systemic racism that I think has been, not just in Grafton, but maybe in our society. And we're all, I think, trying to learn and do better. Pulled it up and now I can't find it on my screen. That was me talking to give myself time. Where is it? Oh, I know why. Okay. Sorry. Remember when we used to meet in the conference room and Jay could just put something on the screen, and if it didn't work, I could blame him. And now it's all on me. All right, I did it. So here's the screen sharing. We talked about this last week as a first reading. Here it is, kind of cleaned up. And we're talking about, 5 pillars of change that we'd like to see in the Grafton Public Schools: teacher education and professional development, including anti-racist workshops. I know Tracy is already working on those things. Thank you, Tracy. I think the acknowledgement of white supremacy and racism and lack of inclusion and inequalities in GPS, that's in general. I think I took that and kind of made it work for Grafton, but I think acknowledging that there is a problem is important. I know Jim is starting to do work with the diversity and inclusion committee starting tomorrow, teaching the history, which is, I think, going to lead into our next conversation, talking about race with students, and then really promoting allyship with students. And I think this is a longer conversation, and that was one of my issues with bringing this up in the first place. I don't want to just pass this resolution to say we passed it. I think this, I know we have a lot of challenges this year. We just spent, almost 2 hours talking about them, but this is something I very firmly believe we need to really work on for the betterment of our students, our district, our town, and ourselves. So I think a few of us were very uncomfortable last week or 2 weeks ago. I know I was, when we kind of talked about this and we didn't mention the mascot. It came up after the meeting with several committee members, including myself. So I'm very pleased that that's coming up, and I think that's partly why it kind of is next on our agenda. So we can talk about this and then move on to that. When we talked about this last time, I don't expect us to have too many other questions, but we might. If you have any, let me know. And what I'll do with this is, once it's passed, I'm going to let the MASC know that we have passed it as well here in Grafton, and they'll do something similar with it that we did with the funding COVID. So all the districts that are signing on and really making a showing that our leadership and education is not going to stand for racism in school anymore. And I think this is an important first step of many. Amy, you're on mute. Oh, there you are.
You almost had me.
I did.
So just to be clear, we're only voting to approve the top piece. We're not the bottom piece that says "or." The suggestion, that's not part of it, right?
Right.
Okay. So this is kind of like, all right, cool.
Good catch. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, I'm happy to take a motion.
I make a motion to accept the anti-racism resolution as presented, or as a second reading.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion on this? All right, this will be a roll call vote. I'm going to actually stop sharing because it makes it easier. Okay, Amy Marr,
Amy Marr, aye.
Jen Conley,
Jennifer Connolly, aye.
Rahul Rati. Rahul, you're on mute.
Rahul Rathi, aye.
Elizabeth Spinney,
Aye.
Laura Often, aye. Motion carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you, everyone. As I said, I'm really proud that we're going to start the work on this. That's great. Now, people got to see a lot, but I think they came for this discussion. So we'll start with the Grafton High School mascot. Jay, do you want to start and share with your presentation?
Oh yeah, here we go.
Or do you want me to just share a little on kind of how this happened, or?
Totally up to you. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I guess I'll start. I think this has been collaborative. I think it's been in the works for a while. I know it's a difficult and passionate thought for many people in our community, and I applaud that. I love how connected people feel with our high school. That's a wonderful thing. Also, I think things have changed a lot over the years. We've seen a petition going around. I think last I saw there was close to 1,000 signatures started by former graduates, or not former, graduates of Grafton High School. I think, as I just spoke about, if we're talking about racism in the school, I think we have to discuss that we have a race-based mascot. This mascot comes up every year. There are articles just, I think, last month written about the schools that are still hanging on. So I'm very pleased that we're having this important discussion. I want the people out there to know that this is not something that's being taken lightly, that this committee has done its work. We have done our research, and I'm going to pass this on to Jay. Oh, I'm going to add one more thing, and then Dr. Cummings, I think this was published in, I believe, Grafton Common, sent us a letter about his thoughts about the mascot over his, I think it's only 9 years in the district, Jay. I know you want to say it's a decade, but
It feels like at least a decade.
I think it's only like 3, but okay. So I'm going to pass it on to you. So thank you for being committed to discussing this. We also have the principal of the high school here, Mr. Pignataro, who can also answer any questions. So go ahead, Jay.
So I just put together just a few slides, really to give questions initially about like the history of the mascot. There were some questions regarding cost. If we were to move away from the existing mascot, what happens? I think those were the 2 big things. So I'll dive right into it. In the History of Grafton book that Joe Curris and Jane Wilson put together, they dove into the history of our use of the Indian. And it was from the Harry Stevens, who by all accounts was a fantastic high school principal. In the early 50s, I think it was 52, he was a graduate and big alumnus of Dartmouth College. They were the Dartmouth Indians, had the same colors, everything else. And he brought that to Grafton. And from around 50, it was either 52 or 54, we took on that Grafton green, and the mascot being the Indians. Interestingly, Dartmouth College eliminated the use of the Indian as their mascot 46 years ago. In 1974, they declared the use of the Indian symbol in any form to be inconsistent with present institutional and academic objectives of the college in advancing Native American education. We do have a local Native American tribe. It comes up numerous times in Native American culture, in our local history, with the local Nipmuc tribe based off of Brigham Hill Road, right near the high school. And so you know, the Nipmuc Indians are native to Central Mass, this area, northeastern Connecticut, and parts of Rhode Island. The Nipmuc position, so years back, I believe it was before, I think it was before I was here, so 9 or 10 years ago, but the chief of the local, I think it's probably the wrong word, but branch, if you will, of the Nipmucs based on Brigham Hill, was, I believe, in support of the Indian as a mascot. That individual is no longer with us. She's passed away, I believe. And the Nipmuc Nation, so their tribal council, came out with a very long statement against the use of the Indian or Native American, anything related to Native Americans, as a school's mascot in September of 2016. They've said, I pulled out this piece just because I thought it was most pertinent. Mascotting another group of people without their permission isn't about love, respect, and honor, but about privilege and power. The same privilege and power that discriminates against Native American people in our nation's every single day. Again, I don't have the entire statement here, but it's a very powerful statement about their strong, very strong dislike of use of Indian or anything related to Native Americans for a school mascot. In terms of costs, this probably isn't all-inclusive. I think it's pretty close, though. We've got the gym floors, and you can see on the left the Native American with the headdress, the Indian, at the high school and over at the middle school. I asked Tony to get some estimates on if we did sand that down and repaint it with whatever is decided upon going forward. It ranged, if we do the entire, I mean, the ideal is to at some point do the entire gymnasium where you're sanding the whole thing so it's really uniform. That's option A. Option B would just be doing like that center area that's pictured there, painting over it and doing that piece. So the range for doing just the center is about $10,000 up to $25,000 for the entire gymnasium. And that would go for each of the gymnasium. There are on some of the banners in the high school, that depiction of the Indian head. There's a small, so we'd have to replace the banners at some point, or we could replace the banners at some point. And there's an image on the scoreboard at the high school on the lower field where the football field is. That one is pretty small on a white background. I imagine that's almost no cost. And then in the GMS auditorium, at the end of the seats on the very end of the aisles have, not all of them, but most of them have a depiction of that Indian head, where we'd have to cover it, paint over it, what have you, if the decision was made to remove it. And that, I think, is all I had in terms of that quick overview.
Jake, before we go on, can you maybe talk a little bit about the survey that was sent to the kids of the high school?
Yeah, Jim, I'm happy to. Jim, do you want to speak to that survey?
Yes, the students, I don't know the exact percentages, but I think on the students that were for the removal of the Indian as a mascot, talked about how it's antiquated, talked about how when it was developed back in the 1950s, the population of Grafton has certainly changed, and many of the students, and it was really some powerful statements, many of the students talked about how we've moved away with from the Indian by putting G's on our uniforms, on our handbooks, have moved away from it. And we have consciously made a decision not to even mention it when people talk about mascots and things of that sort. So the students are bringing that up, saying, if the mascot is not something that we were even proud to talk about, why do we still have it? So those are some of the, the students that were talking about, wanting to make that change.
Thank you. I should also mention, so I will include them in the minutes, but we received at least over a dozen letters of, at least in support of changing the mascot from concerned Grafton citizens. And they'll be included in our minutes, so they'll be available to the public to see. And I think we received 2 from concerned citizens who did not want to change it. They were concerned mostly about honoring the Hassamat Indians and the Nipmunks, and how they thought this would be no longer honoring them. And I think we probably can have some ideas on how we can certainly continue, or I think, and I'm sorry, I'm talking, which I'm breaking my own rules, so I'll definitely pass it over to the committee. I think there are ways we can better honor our Native Americans. So I will pass this over to the committee for any comments. Q&A is going to work the same. We're not taking any comments on this. If there was a question, we tried to kind of best answer our anticipated questions. We know cost seemed to be a big issue. This coming up, some of the things that have also come up is we shouldn't be wasting our time on this now with everything that's going on. I'll answer that this is a very great committee, and we are able to work on more than one difficult problem at a time. And I'm grateful for us for that. And, you know, the issue of his history and pride and honor, which I get, a change is hard. Before I open this up, I will just say in 1994, I attended Hartwick College. Our mascot was the Warriors. Midway through my sophomore year, it suddenly became the Hawks. So I am both a warrior and a hawk of Hartwick, and I am proud of my college. I moved on. I have great memories of Hartwick as a hawk, and it happened, and I still donate money to the school, and we're okay. So that's my personal experience. I'm going to be quiet, though I have much to say, and pass this on to the committee.
You're on mute, Laura.
Laura's on mute.
Oh, bingo. I'm like, Liz, you can go. Are you frozen? Liz, go. And then I see Amy. Sorry, guys.
So thank you to everyone for speaking about this evening. I just want to say, even as a new member of the school committee, I know that this is not something that any of us take lightly. I know I have, and I believe, I think everyone here has been considering this for many years, whether we were on the committee or not. So this is something everyone's put a lot of thought and consideration into. We've been listening to opinions from students, from community members, reading thoughts and opinions about this issue from all over the country, including treatises and studies on the subject about the psychological impact of having such a mascot, and all sorts of things. So this is something we've spent a lot of time thinking about, in addition to all the other issues that we've been thinking about on this committee. But I think that it is, you know, I'm interested to hear the opinions of members of the community, and including members of the Nipmuc Nation, and what their opinions on this are. But what is most significant to me is how the students feel about this. And from what I've heard thus far, and what I've heard this evening, is that the students, many of them are already moving away from the Indian as the mascot, because they don't feel comfortable using it. And what that says to me is that it's no longer serving its purpose, which is to inspire pride among the students. And so I think it's time to find something that they can be proud of. Also, regarding the cost, you know, I'm very fiscally conservative, and normally that would be a big concern for me, but I don't think that's something we need to do right away. We can address, we don't have to suddenly, you know, get rid of the Indian completely from the school. We can make those changes over time as budget allows. You know, we could even, if people want to get together and have fundraisers to refinish the gym floor, that if that's $24,000, that's something that is within a realm of a decent fundraiser. So that's, you know, I'm not worried about that. And I think some of the predominant places where we see this mascot, such as on the website and things and stationery, things like that, can be changed at more easily and quickly and at minimal to no cost. So I think I think it's the right time to make a change like this, and I'm interested in doing this.
Thank you, Liz. Amy.
So I feel the same way as Liz. My three primary concerns on this issue are: one, how do the Nipmucks feel about it? It's very clear to me they don't like it. They don't feel honored by it anymore. If they did at one time, that's super great, but they don't now. And that to me is the most important thing. Two, how do the students feel? How do they want to be represented? And that's why I would not spend time tonight talking about ulterior mascots. Alternative, not ulterior. It's not our job as the school committee to tell the students what their mascot should be. I feel very strongly, and I think Mr. Pignataro does as well, that should be left to the students to decide at a later date. And three, money. And Liz, you already covered that the most visible ways to stop using the mascot right now are the cheapest ways. No one's in the gym. Very few people are using the football field right now, but that could be very quickly just that Indian just kind of painted over for now if we need to, or even just covered up if we wanted, or we could just leave it for a while. But the website, online communications, that's how people see us. And I think that's very easy and cheap. So I don't see any reason to delay this any further.
Great. Rahul?
Unmute. So I think it's beyond Grafton only. It's a nationwide thing going on at the moment. As like just the other day, Washington Redskins, they decided to change their name. And I think that even if you look at the Army helicopters, they were named with the Indian names like the Apache and all. They just show aggression. And they were blessed by the Indian tribes, as I heard. And going beyond that, the paper Jay sent, it gave the whole idea what has to happen. And it has not to only happen in Grafton, but pretty much everywhere. So I agree with Liz also about the costs. And that's a very valid point. We see it on our website, the logo, and on the emails and everything. We should start with that. And we can take care of the rest later, but I am totally in favor of getting rid of the mascot.
Right. Jen, you have any thoughts on this? I'll have to call you out.
No, pretty much just what everyone has been saying. I think listening to the student voice and also the Nipmuc Nations Tribal Council, they have spoke volumes. And if they no longer feel it's representing them as a tribal council, then I would like to respect that.
Great. Liz. Oh wait, I have something to say.
Yeah, go ahead.
That looked like a motion, both of you, but I just wanted to get my 2 cents in because this has been a topic that has been near and dear to me for a long time. And I'm sorry that I haven't brought it up earlier. That 2016 date, Jay, I think we had a lot going on that year, but I was on the committee that year. And I've thought of this as one of my bigger failures over the past few years to not fight for this harder. I fundamentally believe that we are leaders and we need to lead. And sometimes we wait for the kids to show us how to lead. And I think they must be exhausted by now. And I think as leaders in this district, it's time for us to do the right thing. I'm still, would love to talk curriculum and how we can honor the Nipmuc Nation in a better way and be completely honest about how they've been treated over the years and not whitewash our history anymore. And I think we still have a long way to go. But I'm very glad we're talking about this tonight. And I think that I did see, I don't know about the questions, Amy. No, I saw someone raise their hand. Looks like there's a question. Is it a comment? Okay, great.
Yes.
So, okay. Liz, I think you had your hand up.
Yes, I would like to make a motion. I move that the school committee direct the school to end the use of the Indian as its mascot, with the use to be phased out over time as budget allows, and a new mascot to be selected by the high school.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Amy?
I would like to, I mean, I know that the 4 elementary schools each have their own mascot, and the middle school kind of uses the Indian by default because a lot of their sports uniforms I know are handed down, or I know the Grafton girls softball team had given them some at some point. I don't know if the middle school is going to choose a mascot or if they're going to continue to use the Indian, but I feel like their voices need to be heard as well. And so I know the middle school principal isn't on the call, but that's something that I would like to see. I'd like to see them have some choice as well, either as part of the discussion with the high schoolers or choose their own, or maybe it's both. I don't know.
Yep.
Because
Yeah.
they do have athletic teams that compete. They are called the Grafton Indians when they compete. So they need something.
Yep.
Just a thought.
That will definitely happen. I've talked to Roseanne, and she's fully on board with doing that.
And how quickly can we get the Indian off the website?
Kristen already texted Neil, so probably by the time this meeting's over.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, we had any further discussion? Wait, Liz.
I just wanted to add one thing, just speaking to the people who went to Grafton schools and had the Indian as their mascot, and to them it meant a lot, and it was a symbol of pride at the time. I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Mm-hmm.
Also express my hope that if we do begin the process of changing the mascot tonight, that I hope the community will come together and embrace whatever new mascot the school has, so that the students who are here now and in the future can continue to feel pride in the new mascot, same as previous students did in the Grafton Indian that they had.
That's very well said, Liz. I think we are Grafton. I think your pride is in being a Grafton student and a Grafton athlete, and you can still have that pride. And we hope you do. We love this. This town supports its schools and comes out and supports its students, and I think we're very blessed with that. So that was very well said. All right. Any further discussion? Okay, I'm going to take a roll call vote on this. Jen Conley.
Jennifer Connolly, aye.
Amy Marr.
Amy Marr, aye.
Elizabeth Spinney.
Aye.
Rahul Rati.
Rahul Rati, aye.
Laura Often, aye. Motion carries 5-0. Terrific. And Jim, we kind of dropped this on you. So if you need any help and how we can support, and I don't, if you want to share if you've had thoughts on how to go about it.
I think we're going to follow. First of all, I thank everybody for this vote and moving forward. We're going to follow the same process. We went through this a few years ago with the graduation gown, where we brought students together and to create a non-gender gown. And that was, I believe it was 3 or 4 years ago, but we brought kids together, had a great discussion about it and how we move forward, and the kids' input on that of the gowns that we now have was through the student input. And so we'll do the exact same thing with our current students and also alumni, to get their input on, how we move forward.
Great. I do know there's a service out there, if needed, that will do the work, like I think the graphic work for free. I'm sure we have some talented students that can do it, but there is a service that has been forwarded to me that will come and do some of this changing for free. So I'll forward that along if that's somebody we want to engage with.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks for attending tonight for this and for your work. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.
We heard back from Neil already, which is great. You're going to have to wait till tomorrow morning. knowing Neil, he'll do it first thing, but we've got to go through our provider Blackboard to actually, it's like part of the permanent background as opposed to something we just put up. So it'll be down by the time you have breakfast tomorrow.
Well, okay. Don't make promises that you're not doing the work tomorrow sometime.
I'm kind of doing the work.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. All right. Moving on, we have the 2021 meeting schedule. We were able to just kind of keep it to our second and fourth Tuesdays. The August schedule, it does look like we could do the second and the fourth. We will be missing 2 members on that second Tuesday. So we could meet with the 3 of us, or we could meet the first Tuesday of the month and on the last Tuesday of the month. I think for me on this, it depends on, we have so much going on. Looks like we're going to probably need an extra meeting in between now and in 2 weeks. So Jay, is it more helpful for us to meet that first with all of us, not to put you on the spot, or that second week with some of us?
Logically, I would say that first week might not be on a Tuesday, like they typically have put things out so far later in the week. So I don't know if that Thursday, I don't have a calendar in front of me, I apologize, but it doesn't do us much good. I mean, it's fine to be before we get the state guidance, but obviously we're dependent on that guidance is going to dictate almost everything. Why don't we keep it as a Tuesday for now, and then
the first Tuesday or the second Tuesday?
First, sorry.
Okay, so that first one, which is I think the 4th. Does that sound right?
Yeah, it's the 4th.
It's the 4th?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll keep it as the 4th. So we'll change it up a little bit for August. I mean, the nice thing is we don't need rooms, and that way I think everybody can make it according to my doodle. And then
sorry, if let's say we don't have any guidance and there's nothing really pressing, we could either have a real short meeting on the 4th or then look to fall back on the 11th.
Okay, that sounds good. And then the 11th, we'll just know that we do have a quorum. So, okay, perfect. So that's posted. I don't know if anybody has any questions. There are a couple like right before Thanksgiving that week and the week of Christmas. Well, the week before Christmas, we have a longer Christmas break this year. And sometimes we move those. I mean, I think it's going to depend. I don't know when. I mean, I think it would be ridiculous for us to keep meeting if schools are opening as a Zoom. I mean, eventually, but I don't know, would we be masked? I haven't really thought that far in advance. So, but I think for now, it's good to keep it as the second and fourth Tuesdays because that helps with our planning and scheduling. And then if we need to move things around, we can be flexible. Does that help?
That sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. We're kind of at the mercy of whether or not the municipal center is going to open.
Right.
Be able to meet there. I mean, the only other alternative I could think of would be to meet in the LGI. Then you got to get a camera crew in there, and it's a whole thing.
It's a whole thing. Yeah, we've done it, but
yeah, but doing it every other week is a lot, especially with the extra sanitation that would be required. And
yeah, I know. I mean, but there's some benefits. I mean, I have heard a lot of people do really like the Zoom meetings. There's obviously, I think, pros and cons to doing it this way. We've gotten very good at it, and I'm proud of us. But Liz and Rahul might want to have an in-person meeting at some point.
More people can watch this way. I feel like, so that's like,
which is good, and they are, which is great. Okay, so subcommittee assignments. How do we want to discuss them tonight, or push them off 2 weeks? How's people's energies level?
we can
Put
do
it
it.
off.
What, Jen? You said put it off.
Yeah. That's my
Amy,
opinion.
good. Jen,
I'm
Liz?
good with talking about it.
All right. Sorry, Jen. All right. I could go all night. It's the most fun I've had in weeks. All right. So we have some subcommittee assignments coming up. I'll try to pull them up for us to see. And these are some that'll change as sometimes we get new ones. Why does it? There we go. Okay. First one is Grafton Sustainability Committee. Amy's been serving on that. They're almost done their work, right, Amy?
We're almost done the first phase of our work. So the first
Okay.
phase is the benchmarking report.
But then you'll still be meeting after that report is out.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're gonna still go.
So
Yeah.
this is weird. I wouldn't recommend that we make a change unless Amy wanted to get off of it, only because I think it would be good to have continuity, and you've worked really hard. But I would leave it to you, of course.
I would agree with that. It doesn't make a lot of sense for me to go off just because we're still in the middle of it. And it is a limited lifespan committee. So once the next phase, I believe there's only one more phase, is done, then that's it. I'm off and there's nobody else to reappoint. I mean, if somebody's a hankering to tune in and watch the meetings, anybody can. It's all public. So
Right. Okay. All right. Do we need to vote to recommit you? Let's vote. Let's have a formal vote.
sure.
So fun. All right. Somebody want to make a motion to reappoint Amy to the Grafton Sustainability Committee? Liz?
I move to reappoint Amy Marr to the Grafton Sustainability Committee.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion?
It's actually a commission, but yeah,
So what?
it's
What?
a commission. I just now noticed that. Sorry.
Oh, not a committee?
Nope.
Oh, my error. All right.
I amend
Watch this.
motion to appoint Amy Marr to the Grafton Sustainability Commission. I should have got that too.
No, I
Can you
wrote it wrong.
Laura, can you make the screen bigger? I can't see what's on there.
Maybe I can make the font bigger.
Okay,
Bam. How's that?
I can see, that's good.
All right. Great. So we have a motion made and seconded. All right. No further discussion. Once we change it to commission, roll call vote. Jen Conley,
Jen Connolly, aye.
Amy,
Amy Marr, aye.
Liz,
Liz Finney, aye.
Rahul,
Alrighty, aye.
Laura Often, aye. Congratulations, Amy.
Thanks.
All right. Now, Capital Improvement Planning Committee. I kind of just made this up a little bit. Liz.
Oh, no, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I mean, you can read. I wasn't gonna, go ahead.
No, I was just going to make a motion to reappoint Amy Marr to the Capital Improvement Planning Committee.
Okay. Amy, do you accept, or does somebody else want to really be on it?
Well, can I just say that we didn't actually meet last year. So if this is something that somebody would like to take, that would be fine with me, because we never actually got to do anything last year. I'm hopeful the new committee is going to be able to move forward. And let me just say for the record that my husband is standing next to me flipping out because he is also on this committee and he's like, wait, what? But if somebody else wants to take this role, it's very interesting. I mean, as you probably know, the capital projects list for the town is about 50% school stuff. So we do need a good advocate on that committee.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't have a problem with you and Greg serving on the committee. I mean,
Not a conflict of interest?
not in my opinion, but it might be for driving purposes. But is there somebody else that would like to be on this committee? I do think they will be meeting more this year. And like Amy said, we do need an advocate. So if you're passionate about capital, this is the committee for you. Anyone? Bueller? All right.
I'll accept the nomination.
Thank you, Amy. Okay. Did you made the motion?
She did.
Yeah.
Was there a second?
I think that was me.
I think you can second your own. That's fine. All right.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay. Amy Marr,
Amy Marr, aye.
Liz Finney, changing it up.
Aye.
Jen Conley,
Jen Connolly, aye.
Rahul Rati,
Alrighty, aye.
Laura Often, aye. Congratulations, Amy.
Thanks.
All right. Policy Subcommittee. This is a committee that meets pretty regularly. It hasn't met since we've been remote, but we will need to kind of get back into it. The policy subcommittee is charged with reviewing all the current school committee policies and updating them as appropriate. But they bring it to the committee for your approval and votes to review. So everybody gets a say in this. The subcommittee just kind of does a lot of the work. I've been on it for a long time. I'm happy to stay on it and kind of mentor the next generation. It is cumbersome. We have big spreadsheet that we work from, but we've kind of gotten into a good rhythm. I would love to bring somebody up. I know, Amy, I know you were super interested in being on this committee last year. Amy?
I nominate Liz Spinney.
Okay. Second?
Liz, do you want to be on this subcommittee?
Yes, I would like to.
Okay, then second.
Okay. All right. Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor of Liz Spinney say aye. Amy Marr.
Aye.
Jennifer Connelly, aye.
Elizabeth Spinney.
Aye.
Rahul Rati.
Rahul Rati, aye.
Okay. Congratulations, Liz. I look forward to working with you.
Me too.
You'll get your grammar on in this for sure. Okay. Budget subcommittee. So this is something hasn't met in a while. I reached out to Mark Haddad, excuse me, who's the finance chair, and Peter Carlson, who's the select board chair, asking us to please reenact this committee with a new charge. So this was something that back in the day, right after we passed the first override, we wanted to kind of meet together to update the other committees on where we were on our budget, how we were spending, with hopes that the subcommittee members would then be able to educate their own members. That didn't ever really happen the way that it was envisioned. Mark and Peter were both kind of on board with getting it together again, but Mark recommended that we do a TRICOM meeting again and kind of discuss it, not just this subcommittee together, but think really clearly how we're going to move forward as the three boards in the town to be fiscally responsive and hopefully to make this override last as long as possible. But I'd like to maybe have a budget subcommittee in place. Jen, I know you served on it a lot. I think you did deep dives with Dan Gale. This might be a great opportunity for you, Rahul, to kind of get to know the budget. All right. I can't nominate him, but can somebody make a motion?
Nominate Rahul Rati.
Second.
And Jen, I didn't ask if you still wanted to stay on.
No, I would like to. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, Jen's a budget expert, and so we can think about, if you want to think about this charge a little bit, Jen and Rahul, and maybe come back with a recommendation. That would be great. Okay, so we have a motion made and seconded. All those in favor of placing Rahul on our budget subcommittee, say aye. Jennifer Connelly.
Jennifer Connelly, aye.
Amy Marr.
Amy Marr, aye.
Liz Spinney.
Aye.
Rahul Rati.
Rahul Rati, aye.
And Laura Often, aye. Congratulations. All right. And then I just added this one because we haven't talked about it in a long time, Jen. We used to have to sign, the chair would sign the payroll and the warrant. We used to have 3 people sign it. There was a law put in place that we only needed 1 person. Jen Conley's been doing a great job over the years, just going in and reviewing the warrant and kind of being our kind of first eyes and ears on it. Again, we all get to look at the warrant every week. Jen, do you still want to do this committee?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Does somebody object? All right. All right, let's take a quick vote to reappoint Jennifer Connelly as our representative to sign payroll and warrants. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Great. Second? Great. Any further discussion? Great. All those in favor, Rahul Rati.
Rahul Rati, aye.
Jennifer Connelly.
Jennifer Connelly, aye.
Elizabeth Spinney.
Aye.
Amy Marr.
Amy Marr, aye.
Laura Often, aye. Congratulations. Whew, sorry. It'll be good to just have these done. So now, negotiation subcommittees. So we have negotiations with all 5 of our units this year, on top of everything else. We have 5 units. We have teachers, we have paraprofessionals, we have custodians, we have nurses, we have secretaries, and we have the superintendent. All of which we did 1-year contracts with last year. So we'll be looking to do new contracts. First one is teachers. That is probably the most difficult. I would be willing to stay on, and I need somebody else with me.
I can
Are
do
there
it.
any volunteers?
I can.
Nice, Jennifer. Okay.
If someone else can too. Sorry, we have new people.
So this one, we typically meet, all of them typically kind of meet in afternoons. We try to do it with, you know, to meet everybody's needs. But great.
Yeah.
So
Are you looking for motions for all these too, or just volunteers?
I was just thinking, trying to make this efficient.
Can I submit an idea that we try to just fill it up and then make one motion for the whole?
Yes, please.
slate?
That's a great idea. All right. So we have teachers, we have Laura and Jen. Paraprofessionals, I got on that kind of accidentally last year. I do not need to be on all the committees of bargaining, but I'm also happy to stay on and work with somebody new on that one.
I can help with the paras.
Okay. Does anybody else have like a strong desire? I don't want anybody to feel like not getting their voice heard. There's plenty for everybody though. Jen, you've been on custodians for a long time, right? It's probably good for you to stay.
I don't mind staying on,
Okay.
on that. Yeah.
Anybody
I'll
want to volunteer?
I'll hop on with that.
Okay.
Because I think I was going to do it and then I wasn't and then I was. So
Now it's written. Didn't write it down, I think. All right. Nurses. I'm happy to get off of nurses if Amy wants to stay because she's been through it. If maybe we want to swap Rahul, do you want to?
I can do that.
Okay. Everybody's lovely. Kristen Gasper does an amazing job. We're lucky to have her to help, and we have a contract lawyer on our committee. And secretaries, Jen, I believe you were on it with Heather last time, right?
That was the first time I was on it, and then
Yeah.
not really.
Okay.
But yeah.
I can help with this one too.
Okay. All right. And I'd like to stay on with the superintendent. That's okay. We didn't really get far last year, and we had some things in the works that we didn't get to. You guys trust me with that?
Sure.
If that's okay with the superintendent. You're on mute. I'm just kidding. All right. Excellent. Can I have a motion?
I make a motion to have all the negotiation contract subcommittees as written or presented.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right, motion made and seconded. Any further discussion?
We have a question from the audience.
Okay.
Terry Turgeon is saying superintendent should have 2 school committee reps, question mark, question mark. I don't know if that's a requirement, if she's asking.
Yeah, I haven't seen it since I've been on the committee, Terry, but it's certainly a good point, and it's always good to have more than one person doing the work. Does Amy, you want to join? Just hop on?
Sure. Sure, I'll join it.
Great.
It works for me.
You know, transparency and all that. But yeah, I mean, Peter did it for years. It seemed to be always the chair, but I haven't been on long enough to see us really go through it a long time. But fine with me.
Any negotiating experience I can pick up. Good for
From me, the hardcore negotiator.
That's what I hear.
Yeah, me too. All right, so we had a discussion. Okay, all those in favor, roll call vote. Elizabeth Spinney,
Aye.
Jen Conley,
Jennifer Connolly, aye.
Rahul Rati,
Alrighty, aye.
Amy Marr,
Amy Marr, aye.
Laura Austin. Aye, I was waiting. All right, thanks. This is good to have done. So now we have it, and if any meetings come up, and if things come up in the year, we can add another subcommittee. So thank you, everybody. And also for negotiations, we can certainly talk about it. You're not alone. We have lawyers. We have Kristen. They're very well experienced to help us guide us. And it looks like everybody's partnered with somebody that's done it in the past. So don't worry about that if you are worried. Great. So we have some minutes to approve. Oh, future agenda schedule planning. We're obviously going to be talking about the plans. Fees, we're going to bump from tonight to our next meeting or whenever we know about buses. Anything else we want to add? I do apologize. This is a way longer agenda than I normally like to have, but we have a lot going on. So
I'd
thanks for sticking with me.
I like to add the holiday calendar, like we usually approve that.
Yep, for homework and that sort of thing. Yep. Elizabeth?
I was wondering if we could discuss having a central point of communication to the public, or just talking about how best to communicate to the public. We have all sorts of different Facebook pages and websites and different means, and I'd like to talk about how we focus that, and maybe having one, main site that people can go to. I don't want to get into it too much, but just trying to explain my proposed agenda item. Does that make sense?
Sure. I'm always happy to talk about communication. Obviously, I have thoughts about communication as well.
Yeah,
So,
I just wanted to talk about it. We could.
Yeah, of course. Also, that reminds me, I did, before Liz and Rahul, before you got on the committee, we had a planned social media workshop with Tracy Novick, who is our MASC rep and is kind of a guru in school committee social media. And she was going to do a training, and then COVID hit and we canceled it. I did reach out because I would like to reschedule it now that we have more members who are active on social media. It's definitely a potential landmine and an opportunity at once. So if we could meet with her and kind of learn how to best use it without violating open meeting law, that I think would be great. So she hasn't gotten back to me yet. We're all kind of crazy, but I'd like to get that set up at some point in the near future, if that would be okay with everybody.
Sure.
She's super helpful, but that kind of goes along with communication, I think. Great. So that seems like enough, I think, unless there's something else pressing. And Liz, maybe you and I and Jay can connect just to kind of talk about how we want to frame that discussion.
Okay.
Great. Approval of minutes.
I make a motion to accept the June 30th, 2020 meeting as presented or as written.
Second.
Motion made, seconded. Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor? Jen Conley,
Jen Connolly, aye.
Amy Marr,
Amy Marr, aye.
Rahul T,
Rahul Rati, aye.
Liz Spinney,
Aye.
Laura Often. Aye. God, I keep waiting. What's wrong with me? Like, why isn't she saying anything? Financial report. Jay, you didn't have much you wanted to add to the budget at this point, did you?
Nope.
All right. When will we know about the CARES Act funding and how much? Have you been meeting with Tim on that?
I haven't. Anita, he's on vacation right now.
Yeah.
Anita, feel free to speak to it, but I think Anita, is Anita there?
She's there. Yeah.
Is there anything on the CARES Act that you want to speak to?
Just that we had received a letter from the state, basically like a letter with intent saying that we're going to be getting $764,500 for CARES Act money.
Are we, or is the town?
The town. Well, it's between the town and the school.
Okay, so how are we deciding on how much money the school gets and how much money the town gets?
So I believe Dan, Jay, Kristen worked with Becca and Tim regarding X number of expenditures, and Tim had put together a big spreadsheet, and he had submitted a big spreadsheet that totaled $1.6 million. And out of the 1.6 million, 1,186,000 belong to the school.
Wait,
And
say
the-
that again?
Oh, I'm sorry, $1,186,000 of expenditures belong to the school.
Okay.
And it's going to be a split between CARES Act money and FEMA money. So
Okay.
CARES Act is going to be for that money that we're going to get for the 764,500. And then the rest of it's going to be covered by FEMA.
Okay. Do we have any idea when FEMA funds are going to come through? No, right? Because I heard it was taking a very long time. So what if we, and this, you may not be able to answer this, if we spend it, but we can't get reimbursed for a while?
So from what I
do we do?
I mean, Jay, correct me if I'm wrong, but right now, the state put out guidance, actually, when I was on the town side just last month or maybe in the beginning of June, that we can create grant accounts, and then we can deficit spend basically, and that's not going to hit the town's free cash.
Okay. Oh, great. Thank you. Thanks, Anita. Okay. So then any other questions? I know we have a lot of questions, but that you have right now. Okay, we have a warrant.
Yes.
Any questions on the warrant? Or motion, and then we can ask questions.
I move the school committee approve warrant number 3 dated July 16th, 2020 in the amount of $122,376.45.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, this will be a roll call vote. Jennifer Conley,
Jennifer Connolly, aye.
Elizabeth Spinney,
Aye.
Amy Marr,
Amy Marr, aye.
Rahul Rati,
Alrighty, aye.
Laura Often, aye. All right, motion carries 5-0. We're going to pass over fees tonight. I know we talked about that. Any member reports? I have a quick one. I'd like to congratulate the class of 2020 who will be getting their graduation this Sunday. I'm so excited to see them walk, and I want to thank all of our administrative team and leadership team for making it happen, and I'm looking forward to it. I also wanted to mention, I didn't mention at the top of the meeting, I received correspondence very close to our meeting time. I haven't really had a chance to dig into it. They asked that it be read into the record. We typically don't read out loud every letter, but it will be included in the minutes, as I mentioned, with the other letters in support and not in support of the mascot change. So they're obviously public records, so we'll include them into that. And then I'll take a look at the letter more closely when I have a moment and my brain is fresher. So thank you. All right, any other member reports? All right, if that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second,
Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor, Jennifer Conley,
You're on mute.
Jennifer Connolly, aye.
Amy Marsh, loves that.
Amy Marr, aye.
Rahul Rati,
Alrighty, aye.
Liz Spinney,
Aye.
and Laura Often, aye. All right, everybody, thank you so much. Good night.